Hey guys, Dr. Frank here, founder of Addiction Mindset Recovery Coaching Programs. And in today's brief video, I want to spend some time talking about greening out. Now, I made a previous video on this, so be sure to check that out. I put the tag up above, but this is a phenomenon that's going on right now. We hear about the slang term greening out, especially when we're talking about using carts or when we're using edibles. Yes, a green out can happen from dry herb or wax or dabs or shatter, whatever else it is that you're smoking or ingesting with THC. Now, greening out is referring to a point, imagine like blacking out. When you're talking about blacking out from drinking too much alcohol, a green out is greening out from consuming too much THC or too much weed product. But in today's video, we're going to talk about two scenarios and what it is that's probably actually happening when you experience a green out or, in theory, a level of THC toxicity. Now, I'm not saying overdose, but definitely a point to which you consume too much THC. So remember, if you find my videos helpful, be sure to subscribe. Now's a good time to do that. I make a video every day about THC addiction, nicotine addiction, pornography addiction, whatever it is you need help quitting. Chances are I have content on it. So let's start by talking about scenario number one when it comes to greening out. So scenario number one would mean that you're smoking a legitimate cart or consuming legitimate edibles. And what do I mean by a legitimate cart or legitimate edibles? Well, there's really four key things that would make a cart or an edible legitimate. Thing number one, you went to a licensed, state-regulated, emphasis on those two words, licensed and state-regulated dispensary, and you purchased it yourself. Now, there's a lot of shady dispensaries out there that are not licensed, that are not state regulated. And if you're buying products from those are considered to be black market products. Remember that. So step number one, a licensed state regulated dispensary. Two, did the product have legitimate third-party testing? There's tons of false third-party testing reports being made, counterfeit third-party testing reports. So is there legitimate third-party testing that matches a specific lot and batch ID number on your product? Are there child-proof tampering mechanisms on the product that you purchased, right? It shouldn't be easy to access this product if it's legitimate because they'd want to protect it from younger kids. Are there government warnings issued on the product that you purchased? And lastly, like health hazards like you see on tobacco products and alcohol products. And lastly, is there a date of manufacturing and or a date of expiration and production on the product that you purchased? Now, so again, this is greening out, assuming you're consuming a legitimate THC, a legitimate cart product. So you consume this edible, you take a few rips of your cart, you take a few rips of the bong, and boom, before you know it, you're greening out. You're vomiting, you're throwing up constantly in front of a toilet, your skin is pale, you can't talk, maybe you feel like you've had a stroke, your body's going numb, your friends are worried you might have a mini seizure, you are in bad shape, and you're clinging to that toilet for the life of you, and you've now, quote unquote, greened out. So possibility number one, which involves a legitimate cart and a legitimate weed product, is you've overloaded your endocannabinoid system or you've overloaded your endocannabinoid receptors. So your body has this system called your endocannabinoid system, and your body makes its own THC. Your body makes its own CBD, okay? In theory, they're called something different. But when you smoke THC or when you consume an edible or smoke a cart, that THC binds to the CB1, the cannabinoid 1 receptors on the back of your brainstem. And if you overload those receptors, Cannabis is biphasic, so at too low of an amount, it's not going to do a lot. At maybe the right amount, it might get you comfortably high. And when you consume too much, you might have anxiety, psychosis, depersonalization, vomiting, stomach problems, nausea, inability to speak, numbness and tingling and pain in your body. And that's greening out. Greening out from a legitimate thing, in my opinion, in my professional opinion, is an overload of your endocannabinoid system, because you've now flooded the THC receptors in your body and you're in for a wild ride for the next few hours. Now, when this happens to people, unfortunately, they can suffer longer lasting psychosis, deep disassociation disorders, depersonalization disorders, where they don't feel like things are real. They feel detached from reality. I remember the first time, and my story is a little different, I greened out. It was on a TKO cart, but I don't think I greened out. I think I just actually smoked Spice or K2, which we're going to talk about next. So that's scenario number one. What do you do to recover from that? You obviously stop smoking, drink plenty of liquids. I would highly recommend consulting with some talk therapy. Feel free to call our offices below if this has happened to you. We'll work with you one-on-one. Eat healthy foods. Start to regulate your sleep, and certainly don't consume alcohol or other drugs or other substances over the course of the next few days. I do find in some cases, and this is a very delicate piece of advice, CBD may actually help in this scenario. Now, again, I'm only saying CBD is going to help assuming you're not suffering from cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, because if you have CHS or cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, CBD can actually make that significantly worse. So if you've just consumed too much THC, an acute toxicity of THC, CBD might actually help you. If you're in that chronic phase, constantly vomiting, constantly throwing up, suffering from psychosis, depersonalization, more long-term weight loss, CHS symptoms, CBD can actually trigger all those symptoms and make you significantly worse. So if you're thinking about using CBD, I did put a website link below to a company that we work with, but please reach out and consult with my offices to figure out if this is going to make things worse or make things better before you just go purchase gummies or capsules or liquid CBD. Okay? Now, scenario number two, when it comes to greening out, has nothing to do with greening out at all. About 78% of the carts and edibles and things like that on the market today are black market products. They're not what they say they are. They're not actually a lot of THC in them at all. They tend to be more pesticides and heavy metals and other drugs, most commonly Spice or K2, which is a synthetic form of marijuana. Now, there have been reports of fentanyl carts, heroin carts, carts laced with opioids. I've seen an incident of one laced with Molly that I believe I read. So what's happening in this scenario where the person takes a rip of a cart, maybe just it's their first rip of the night, and all of a sudden they green out. They're vomiting, they can't talk, they're having like a mini seizure, they're throwing up like crazy, they're clinging to the toilet, and the next day they're super depressed. They feel like they're coming off of a cocaine bender versus off of marijuana. Well, chances are this person didn't green out. In a case like this, it's more realistic that they suffered an acute overdose of a drug. Now, again, I don't know what that drug was. I think in most cases, it's probably Spice or K2. And this is where this person's also going to feel those really physical, intense withdrawals when they start to quit the cart or when they start to quit the edibles. It is true, marijuana has a lower likelihood of a physical dependence. It does exist, but the withdrawals from true marijuana are pretty minor. If you're quitting Spice or K2 or opioid-laced carts, you're going to have much more intense withdrawals. You're going to have a much more intense experience. And if you greened out off of a laced cart, you didn't green out. You kind of overdosed in a way. Obviously, you didn't die or you wouldn't be watching this. but you overdosed. You reached acute drug toxicity, and who knows what that drug actually was unless you go and get that cart tested, or you go to the hospital and you request a drug toxicology report to see what it is that actually occurred. And I have a feeling most people who think they're greening out aren't actually greening out. I think what's actually occurring is you're smoking these black market laced cartridges, and that's causing illness, that's causing significant sickness. So that's not greening out. And now in this case, your recovery from the product is more about detoxing from a drug and healing, which are the same things: eating healthy, getting plenty of sleep, going through talk therapy, maybe trying to figure out what it is that actually occurred to you. A lot of times people will go to the doctor after a green out and they'll simply prescribe them more drugs: benzos, Xanax, Lexapro. And really, in my opinion, this is the worst thing you could do, because this individual just suffered an acute potential overdose or level of toxicity from a substance, and we don't even know what that substance is. And then to give them more drugs on top of it only complicates the detox process. So greening out is really two different scenarios. Either you greened out on legitimate THC and you overloaded your endocannabinoid system, or you smoked a boof cart or a laced product and you didn't green out, but you reached acute drug toxicity of spice, K2, opioid, fent, heroin, whatever it was laced with. So there's two very different scenarios, and how you treat those scenarios are two very, very, very different things. The only thing that they have in common for a treatment, realistically, is probably the talk therapy. Call our number below if you need help or you need support. You can text us too. And I already also mentioned CBD and the potential benefit or danger that CBD may play in helping someone who's greened out. If you have cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome and you take CBD, you're going to make things a million times worse. If you had acute THC toxicity, you might actually be able to make things better. So just some points to consider. I'm going to catch you guys in the next video where I talk more about my personal experiences greening out. I remember greening out from a TKO cart, vomiting, couldn't talk, thought I had a stroke, whole body went numb. I literally thought I was going to die. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Be sure to subscribe if this helps.